Okay, so today we're going to be talking about context clues. So this is kind of building off of the prefixes and suffixes lesson from the last unit. We're taking it a step further. And so it's pretty much the same thing though. We're using what we do know to figure out what we don't know. And so I have an example right here. We have Susan, and Susan may or may not show up for basketball practice. She can be kind of undependable. And so, if let's just assume I did not know what undependable was, well, I don't know what that means. I don't get what's going on here. I can look back at that first sentence, and it tells me Susan might not show up for practice. So I mean, that's what undependable is. You can't really depend, can't really rely on her. So like I said, if we didn't know undependable, we could go back and see. She might not show up. There's no telling with her. Just unreliable, undependable. We just use that context to figure that out. Now there are 5 kind of main ways to put together context clues, main ways they'll show them to you. The first one is just by giving you the definition later in the sentence. So it'll just be an explanation of the word that is given somewhere else in the sentence. It's not always later, it might be just somewhere else. So in this example, we have volunteer. And so again, let's just pretend like we didn't know what volunteer was. We never heard of that. Well, if I ask you, what's a volunteer? What does that mean? And you explain it to me, well, a volunteer firefighter works for no pay. So again, we have the word right here that we're looking for. Later on in the sentence, I have it highlighted in a bracket just to keep up with it, make it easy. But we have that word. Later on, the definition is connected to it. So that's what tells us what a volunteer is. They just put it later in the sentence and explain it to us. So that's the definition. That's going to be number 1. Number 2 is just giving an example. And so they will use some kind of words to provide an example. So you're going to look for stuff like such as, like, for example, including, just anything like that. So again, right here, our word that we're looking for is fictional. I've never heard of that. I don't know what fictional is, but let me keep reading and see. So fictional creatures such as dragons and dwarves exist only in fairy tales. Well, okay, so there's the example right there. Fictional creatures, and there's our word, such as. So that tells us right there, we're cluing in, such as dragons and dwarves. They list a couple fictional creatures for us to give an example so that we kind of get what's going on. Because we know that dragons and dwarves do not exist in the real world. So fictional has got to mean imaginary, made up, anything like that. And there will be multiple ways of figuring out. Because see right here, exists only in fairy tales. That goes back to number 1, that definition. So again, they give us the example of fictional creatures, and then they give us the definition of it. So that's both ways we could easily figure out what fictional means just by going through our steps. Number 3 is going to be just restatement. And so it's just where the word is restated in easier words. So if I said the dog was vicious, again, we've never heard of vicious. We don't know what that means. And then, okay, so the dog was vicious. We got a semicolon. He barked and snapped at the neighbors. And so we know what bark and snap means. That's that sounds like a mean dog. And so by that, using those context clues, we can put that together and figure out that vicious means like mean or just unpleasant, anything like that. Number 4 is comparison. And so this is kind of like the example. It just kind of restates it, compares it to something else. And so we have colossal. And so again, we don't know what colossal means, but the colossal building was as tall as the tower. And so it's kind of like they explain where they have certain words to look for. It would be like, similar to, and that's what we see right here, as blank a blank or something. So as tall as a tower. That's again, we don't know what colossal means, but we can go back here and we know tall. We know towers are obviously going to be very tall. So we can put together that colossal just means big or tall, anything like that. And the last one, number 5, is cause and effect, and it just kind of tells us what happened and why. And for this one, I don't know if y'all seen Step Brothers, but you remember where when they build the bunk beds, they just do it real quick, and then of course as soon as they get in, it breaks on them, it falls down. And so then this time, the word we're looking for is calamitous. And I mean, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that out loud. I really couldn't tell you what calamitous means. But we can go through it, we can look for our cause and effect, and so we can see. So Brennan and Dale's calamitous decision to build poorly constructed bunk beds soon led to destruction and bodily harm. As soon as they get in them, it falls down, breaks down on them. And so that's our cause and effect. The cause, these poorly constructed bunk beds, it was just put together with like random boards and hockey sticks and all. So that's the cause, poorly constructed bunk beds. And then soon led kind of tells us, that's our verb right there. That's the cause, soon led, here's the effect, destruction and bodily harm. It broke down on them. And so any of those 5 ways, like I said, again, sometimes it might be multiple, but you just go through your steps. You got the definition, example, cause and effect, just the other ones, just the other steps. You just go through them. Like I said, it's all about using what you do know to piece together and figure out what you do not know.